My research reveals that prior to the 14th century, a Germanic tribe, the Chatti, had lived for many, many generations in the county of Hessen, which is between the Weser River and the lower part of the Rhine River. Over time, the Chatti were invaded by offshoots of the Scandinavian tribe, the Suebi, followed by the Romans and then the Franks. By the 14th century, commoners had surnames, and the first mention appears of a Wiederhold, my apparent ancestor, born about 1390 in Hamburg, migrated some 17 kilometers to Felsberg, when employed in 1416 by Count Philip the Generous, who actually lived 100 years later. Another mention in 1441 was a Nicholas Wiederhold, who paid a fee of 3 Groschen, 30 cents, to enroll in the University of Erfurt, Thuringia. A 1460 citation mentions that a trumpeter named Wiederholder brought some sick horses from Hamburg to Kassel to a veterinarian. What was happening in and around Europe? From the 15th century onwards, Europe was on the way to centuries of the golden age of bacteria. Ignorant of the nature of epidemics, though containing its population growth, most people believe plague and mass illnesses to be the punishment from God for their sins. They responded with religious penitential acts, aiming at tempering the Lord's wrath, or with passivity and fatalism. It was a sin to try to avoid God's will. The plague was a serious economic and social blow to the Roman Catholic Church, as was the trade struggle with the Muslims in the Mediterranean, and the Silk Route had been closed to the Christian trade. These factors led to the Inquisition against witches and heretics, an increased persecution of foreigners, beggars, lepers, gypsies, Muslims, and Jews. A famous example is Galileo suggesting the sun, not the earth, being the center of the universe. Although other cultures had known this, and that the earth was not a saucer but round, a long time ago. However, this was nothing new for the Jews in Europe, who had a policy of usury applied only to non-Jews. Usury was a sin in the eyes of the Christians and Muslims as well. Starting in Spain, the Sephardi first integrated with the Muslims. Shunned by them, they integrated with the Christians. Again shunned, the majority, 300,000, migrated either northwards or back to the Middle East. The Ashkenazi, who had migrated via the Greek and Roman islands, were expelled from England and France, 16,000 of them, moving northeastwards through Germanic states. The majority found themselves in the Slavic states southeast of the Baltic, as did the Khazarians, who migrated via Greece through the Slavic and Rus lands. Jews did not have armies of their own, they always cohabitated, yet maintained their identity and contributed too significantly to the host's administration, i.e. in economics, science, and culture, thereby resulting in mistrust and jealousy, leading to banned trade with Christians, forced conversions, or wearing identification, a concept used earlier by the Muslims, property confiscation, synagogue burning, expulsions, stake burning, and enslavement. Around 1450, to overcome trade conflicts between Christians and Muslims, the Spaniard Christopher Columbus and the Portuguese Vasco da Gama explored the sea routes at great risk, instead of land routes, in order to obtain spices, silks, etc. from the east. Trade winds took Columbus to the west, resulting in Catholic Spain's invasion and gold pillage of the Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas in Central and South America, who knew a lot about astronomy. It is from there that round about 1550 onwards, tomatoes, potatoes, corn, and chocolate were introduced into Europe. Potatoes only became part of Europe's staple diet thereafter, while the trade winds took the Portuguese south around the southern tip of Africa and thereby established the sea route to India and China, which resulted in introducing medicinal tea into Europe. Although the Norse had discovered North America some time before, the rest of Europe, in particular England, Ireland, France, and Holland, joined the party, and all vied for these territories, invading, pillaging, and annihilating, with the help of their viruses and under the guise of religion, the land and inhabitants of the Americas, Africa, India, Asian coastal mainland of, and the islands in the Pacific Ocean, establishing European colonies. As it was common practice around the Mediterranean for centuries to have slaves, be it the Greeks, the Romans, or the Muslims, etc., the practice extended across the oceans, in particular to the Americas. At least 12 million slaves, cargo, from Western Africa were sold to work in the coffee, tobacco, cocoa, sugar, and cotton plantations, gold mines and silver mines, rice fields, construction industry, logging timber for ships, and as domestic servants, and a few as skilled workers. Apparently sugar had become known to the Crusaders, but would not grow in Europe. They only had beet sugar. In Spain, the Reconquista concluded with the fall of Granada in 1492, ending over 7 centuries of Islamic rule in the Iberian Peninsula. In the meantime, Muslim Ottomans overthrew the Byzantine Empire in the 1453 conquest of Constantinople, Istanbul, and in the 16th and 17th centuries, the Ottomans were a powerful, multinational, multilingual, religious-tolerant empire controlling much of Southeast Europe, such as the Corsicas and Hungary, but were stopped short of Moscow and Vienna by Habsburg and Polish resistance. They also controlled Western Asia, North Africa, and the Horn of Africa, thereby introducing coffee and rice onto the European stage. The Duchy of Moscow, 1480, a small principality, overthrew the Mongols, and by 1584 the Orthodox Tsardom of Russia, under Ivan IV, Ivan the Terrible, had engulfed lands as far as Siberia, but did not gain access to the Baltic Sea.